Peru, the Public Prosecutor's Office summoned appointed President Xi Boluarte to answer for the death register at national level during the protests carried out between December 20th to the 22nd and January 20th to the 23rd. Chinese President Xi Jinping received Russian Premier Mikhail Mishustin in a meeting where the two leaders reaffirmed their country's determination to promote a multipolar world. And in Switzerland, U.S. singer Tina Turner died at the age of 83. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm with Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Peru, the Public Prosecutor's Office summoned appointed President Xi Boluarte to answer for the death register at national level during the protests carried out between December 2022 and January 2023. The proceeding is part of the investigation against the president for the alleged crime of genocide and has been scheduled for Wednesday, May 31st. The head of state's lawyer, Joseph Campos, welcomed the disposition of the prosecutor's office and announced that his client will attend the summons. Campos stressed that the executive power has asked the public prosecutor's office to speed up the investigations into the death toll of at least 60 people who died during the days of protests in the country, especially in the regions of Puno, Arequipa, Cusco, Apurímac, and Ayacucho. Ecuador's National Electoral Council approved the budget for the early presidential and legislative elections scheduled for August 20th. The budget approval came after President Guillermo Lasso dissolved the National Assembly using the cross-death mechanism and brought forward the vote schedule for 2025. Lasso's decision came as lawmakers tried to impeach him for not stopping a deal between the state-owned oil transport company and a private tanker company. Elections had to be called within 3 months for both the Assembly and presidency. The winners will serve out the remainder of the terms of those elected officials. If there is no outright winner, a runoff vote will be held in October. On Wednesday, the 7th Commission of the Chamber of Representatives of the Colombian Congress approved the health reform proposed by the government of Gustavo Petro with 14 votes in favor and 6 votes against. The Commission approved 143 articles that will change the country's health system and will allow Colombians to have a healthcare model with quality infrastructure, health workers with proper salary, working conditions, and patients with comprehensive care, as said the Ministry of the Health in its Twitter account. Also, President Petro congratulated the congressmen for the approval of the initiative, considered one of the pillars of his government. The reform proposes an operating model in which primary care centers and the comprehensive and integrated networks will be made up of public, private, and mixed entities.
I want you to realize of this ramification of this decision you have made today. This reform will definitely improve the lives of people for whom access to health care was an aspiration, not a right.
On Tuesday, former Panamanian President Ricardo Martinelli faces trial on corruption charges for alleged money laundering after having been acquitted in 2 previous trials on charges of wiretapping. The former president and 19 other people are being tried in the new business case opened by the Public Prosecutor's Office in 2017. This consists of a complex scheme of bank transfers through which illicit funds were transferred to a company for the sum of $43 million for the purchase of Editora Panama America. In addition to this process, Martinelli will also face between August and October, together with his 2 sons and the also former president Juan Carlos Varela, another trial for bribes from the Brazilian consulting firm Odebrecht. Authorities in the Mexican state of Puebla reported on Tuesday the death of journalist Marco Aurelio Ramirez Hernandez in the city of Tehuacan. According to a statement, the 69-year-old journalist was attacked by a group of armed men when he was traveling in his car after leaving his home. The human rights organization Article 19 indicated that Ramirez Hernandez worked as a journalist for almost 30 years in several media outlets, and in 2018 he worked in the mayor's office of Tehuacan. Article 19 demanded that the Puebla Prosecutor's Office investigate the murder through the Protocol Against Crimes Against Freedom of Expression and requested protection for the journalist's family and colleagues. Article 19 affirmed that 157 journalists have been murdered in Mexico since 2000 for carrying out their journalistic work. Mexico's inflation eased further in the first half of May amid declines in energy costs and lower fresh produce prices. According to the National Statistics Institute, the Consumer Price Index fell 0.32% in the first 2 weeks of the month, with energy prices down 4.4% from the end of April, as seasonal residential electricity subsidies took effect in a number of cities. Likewise, gasoline and propane gas prices were also lower. In this sense, the decline in inflation from 7.82% at the end of 2022 led the Bank of Mexico last week to keep its reference interest rate on hold, ending a nearly 2-year monetary tightening cycle. However, with inflation still well above its 3% target, the central bank said it expects to keep the overnight interest rate target at the current 11.25% for an extended period. Let's take now a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. On Wednesday in Germany, climate activists from the Last Generation group held a press conference to denounce the latest police persecution against 7 of their members. Members of Last Generation reiterate that police forces continue to attack members of the organization as if they were criminals, and that on Wednesday they suffered raids on their own homes. According to Amy Van Valen, spokesperson for the group, these actions frightened its members. Wednesday's raids were ordered on suspicions that the activists were forming or supporting a criminal organization, according to a joint statement from the police and the Bavarian prosecutor's office. The justice instance also informed about 15 properties were raided, the seizure of 2 accounts, and said it ordered to froze several assets.
The 15 house searches that took place this morning have hit all the supporters of the Last Generation hard. They scare us, but we must not stay scared. The federal government is driving us into climate hell with its eyes wide open. It is even pressing on the gas pedal. We must continue to resist now.
On Wednesday, Chinese President Xi Jinping received Russian Premier Mikhail Mishustin in a meeting where the two leaders reaffirmed their country's determination to promote a multipolar world. The Chinese head of state and the Russian premier declared that their nations and peoples are jointly resisting attempts by some Western countries to impose their will and maintain world dominance. They also appreciated the good neighborliness and the strength of their cooperation, which is estimated to exceed 200 million euros in 2023. Mishustin's 2-day trip is the highest level visit by a Russian official to China since the start of the armed conflict in Ukraine. In this regard, Chinese President Xi Jinping declared on Wednesday during a meeting in Beijing with Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin that his country is ready to build its relations with Moscow on the basis of mutual support and taking into account the key interests of both nations. At the same time, he stressed that Moscow and Beijing should continue to exploit the potential of their partnership through trade and investment. The Chinese leader stressed the need for the two countries to intensify their joint work in international forums and organizations such as the UN, BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the G20. For his part, the head of the Russian government said that Moscow frankly appreciates China's good neighborliness and the special importance of China for Russia in conditions of growing turbulence in the international arena. Russian President Vladimir Putin took part in the round of consultations between Russia and the Association of the Southeast Asian Nations being held in Moscow. Via video conference, Putin reiterated his intention of strengthening ties in every possible way. He emphatically said his country appreciates friendly and respectful relations with all nations of the world and pledged to reinforce such ties. He referred to growing global instability promoted by the United States in its eagerness to maintain dominance by imposing rules on developing individual alliances. The meeting being held in Moscow hinges upon strategic stability, and arms control has been called on by Cambodia. The Russian Group South thwarted another attack by the Ukrainian armed forces. The group spokesman Vadim Astafiev reported the attack took place in the towns of Avdiivka, Marinka, Alexandro, Kalinovo were significant. Casualties of personnel and armored vehicles of the Ukrainian armed forces were confirmed. Likewise, Astafiev assured the attack did not cause any losses to the Russian troops. Meanwhile, other offensive targeted positions of the Ukrainian units and an ammunition depot in Lysychansk and Svanovka. Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu warned on Wednesday that Moscow will respond harshly to attacks on Russian soil after jets and artillery fought off an armed group that crossed from Ukraine.
We will continue to respond promptly and extremely harshly to such actions by Ukrainian militants. The remains of the nationalists were pushed to the territory of Ukraine, where they continued to be defeated until they were completely eliminated. More than 70 Ukrainian terrorists and also vehicles and armored vehicles were destroyed.
teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, dial 461 and enjoy Latin American alternative broadcasts. One final short break, we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In South Africa, the Provincial Ministry of Health in Gauteng province confirmed that the death toll from a cholera outbreak in the Hammanskraal district has risen to 17. According to the source, of a total of 165 patients have been treated at the Jubilee District Hospital in Hammanskraal, of which 18 have been transferred to local health centers. Meanwhile, Gauteng health spokesperson Motalatal Modiba urged the public to contact the health authorities in the presence of diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, stomach cramps, and symptoms of dehydration to receive medical treatment. He also recommended avoiding the consumption of contaminated or non-reliable food and water. Meanwhile, the executive mayor of the Tshwane Metropolitan District, Celia Brink, revealed that tests carried out on the water supply system show no cholera contamination. We stay in South Africa, where residents of Hammanskraal, a town located north of Pretoria, warn of problems in the supply and quality of water as one of the causes of the current cholera outbreak.
Since 2016, staying in this place, Kanana, we've been having water issues. They were able to provide us with water pipes, but these pipes are not good as water coming out of there is brown. We're asking them at least to clean the water or bring us water trucks 3 times a week. All we are asking is to have clean water.
The peoples are not happy with the quality of water that is being supplied here, and it's not only the beginning of it. It's been like this for quite some times now, and then we as a people or the community here, we try to make some initiatives to make sure that the people around our community get some clean water in this area.
More than 1 million Somalis have been displaced within their own country in just over 4 months due to a toxic mix of drought, conflict, and flooding, humanitarian agencies said Wednesday. Some 433,000 people were forced to flee their homes between January 1st and May 10th because of the virulent Islamist insurgency and fighting that erupted in the separatist region of Somaliland, the UN Refugee Agency and the Norwegian Refugee Council reported. In a joint statement, they also said that more than 408,000 people were displaced by floods and another 312,000 by the devastating drought. Somalia and its neighbors in the Horn of Africa, including Ethiopia and Kenya, have suffered the worst droughts in 4 decades, after 5 failed rainy seasons that have left millions in need and decimated crops and livestock. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and world governments are meeting on Wednesday in New York at a conference to seek $7 billion in funding to help those in need across the region. U.S. singer Tina Turner, who rocketed to stardom with soul classics and pop hits like The Best and What's Love Got to Do With It, has died at the age of 83. The US-born singer left a hardscrabble farming community and abusive relationship to become one of the top recording artists of all time. According to her representative, she died peacefully after a long illness in her home in Küsnacht, near Zurich, Switzerland. Turner began her career in the 1950s during the early years of rock and roll and evolved into an MTV phenomenon. Nicknamed the Queen of Rock and Roll, Turner won 6 of her 8 Grammy Awards in the 1980s, a decade that saw her land a dozen songs on the top 40, including Typical Male, The Best, Private Dancer, and Better Be Good to Me. Her 1988 show in Rio de Janeiro drew 180,000 people, which remains one of the largest concert audiences for any single performer. We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and you can also join us in our social medias. And to honor the legacy of Tina Turner, we present you a fragment of one of her most iconic concerts in Brazil in 1988. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.